Imagine pulling a penny from your pocket and realizing it was made during one of the most dramatic years in American coin history. A year when people were hoarding coins, silver was disappearing from circulation, and the U.S. Mint was working around the clock. That penny is the 1964 Lincoln cent, and while it may look ordinary at first glance, its story is anything but ordinary. The 1964 Lincoln penny is part of one of the longest-running and most recognizable coin designs in American history. It features President Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. By 1964, Americans had already been using Lincoln pennies for more than 50 years. But something unusual was happening behind the scenes that made this particular year stand out. To understand why the 1964 penny matters, we need to go back to the early 1960s. The United States was experiencing a major coin shortage. Rising silver prices caused people to pull silver coins like dimes, quarters, and half dollars out of circulation. Many Americans believed those coins would soon be worth more melted down than spent. As a result, everyday transactions became harder, and the U.S. Mint was under pressure to produce more coins than ever before. In 1964, the Mint responded by dramatically increasing coin production. Lincoln pennies were struck in massive numbers to meet demand. These pennies were made at two main locations. Philadelphia produced coins with no mint mark, and Denver produced coins with a small d under the date. There is no San Francisco mint mark on regular 1964 pennies, something that often surprises new collectors. The design itself remained unchanged from previous years. On the front, Abraham Lincoln's profile faces to the right, based on a design created by sculptor Victor David Brenner in 1909. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial stands proudly, with Lincoln's statue visible between the columns if you look closely. This was the standard design from 1959 through 2008, making the 1964 penny part of a familiar era for many Americans. One of the most important features of the 1964 Lincoln penny is what it is made of. These coins are composed of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. This makes them noticeably heavier and richer in color than modern pennies, which are mostly zinc with a thin copper coating. Many people don't realize that every 1964 penny contains nearly a full penny's worth of copper by weight, which adds to its long-term appeal. Because so many 1964 pennies were made, you might wonder why collectors care about them at all. The answer lies in condition, mint marks, and rare errors. While most examples are very common, certain versions stand out and can be surprisingly valuable. One of the most sought-after varieties is the 1964 double die obverse penny. This error occurred when the coin die was misaligned during production, causing parts of the design to appear doubled. On these pennies, the date and the words "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" can show clear doubling that is visible to the naked eye. These are not common, and collectors are always searching for them. There are also rumors and legends surrounding special 1964 pennies known as SMS, or special mint set coins. These coins have a unique finish that looks different from both regular circulation strikes and proof coins. Only a handful are known to exist, and their origin has never been officially explained by the U.S. Mint. If authentic, these pennies are extraordinarily rare and can sell for tens of thousands of dollars. In more typical cases, value depends heavily on condition. A worn 1964 penny that has been in circulation for decades is usually worth only a few cents. However, a well-preserved coin that still has its original red copper color can be worth significantly more. Collectors use grading systems to describe condition, and higher grades can bring strong prices. There have been real auction examples that show how wide the value range can be. A standard 1964 D penny in average condition might sell for just a few cents, but a high-grade example with full red color has sold for over $20. A confirmed 1964 double die penny has sold for hundreds, and in some cases thousands, depending on clarity and condition. The mysterious 1964 SMS pennies, when they appear, have sold for well over $10,000. Knowing how to identify a genuine 1964 penny is important, especially with valuable errors involved. First, check the date carefully. The numbers should look clean and consistent. Next, look for the mint mark under the date. A D means Denver. No mint mark means Philadelphia. If you see an S, that is a red flag, as regular 1964 pennies were not struck with an S mint mark. Weight is another helpful clue. A real 1964 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams because of its copper content. Modern pennies weigh less. Magnet tests can also help, since genuine copper pennies are not magnetic. For error coins like double dies, compare the coin to known verified examples, focusing on clear doubling rather than blurry or damaged lettering. One surprising fact about the 1964 penny is how many Americans unknowingly saved them. Because people were already hoarding silver coins, some also set aside copper pennies, thinking they might become valuable one day. This means that millions of 1964 pennies still exist in jars, drawers, and boxes across the country, waiting to be rediscovered. Another fun detail is that 1964 was the last year before major changes hit U.S. coinage. Just 1 year later, in 1965, silver was removed from dimes and quarters entirely. The 1964 penny stands at the edge of that transition, representing the final moments before America's pocket change changed forever. Collectors love the 1964 Lincoln penny not because it is rare in general, but because it offers so many possibilities. It is affordable for beginners, yet still exciting for experienced collectors hunting rare errors or top-grade examples. It is a coin that connects everyday Americans to a pivotal moment in economic history. There is also something deeply nostalgic about this penny. It may have passed through countless hands during the civil rights era, the space race, and the height of post-war America. Each coin carries silent stories of coffee purchases, newspaper sales, and childhood piggy banks, so the next time you see a 1964 penny, don't dismiss it as spare change. Take a closer look. You might be holding a small piece of history, or even a hidden treasure. And remember, sometimes the most fascinating coins are the ones we've been overlooking all along. Imagine pulling a single penny from your pocket and realizing it carries the story of a nation recovering from crisis, a major change at the U.S. Mint, and a quiet comeback that most people never notice. Today we're talking about a coin that looks ordinary at first glance, but holds a surprisingly important place in American coin history. This is the 1968 Mint Mark Lincoln penny. The 1968 Lincoln cent is a 1-cent coin that almost every American has seen, and many have spent without a second thought. It features Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. What makes this penny special is not just its design, but when and how it was made. For collectors, the tiny letter under the date can completely change the story and sometimes the value of this coin. To understand the 1968 penny, we need to step back to the 1960s, a time when the United States was facing a serious coin shortage. Rising silver prices caused people to hoard coins, and the U.S. Mint struggled to keep enough money in circulation. To discourage hoarding, mint marks were removed from coins between 1965 and 1967. This meant that for several years, no U.S. coins showed where they were made. By 1968, the crisis had eased, and the Mint decided it was time to bring mint marks back. That decision makes the 1968 Lincoln penny historically important. It represents the return of mint marks to American coins after a 3-year absence. For the first time since 1964, collectors could again see where their pennies were struck. In 1968, Lincoln pennies were made at 3 different locations. Philadelphia produced pennies with no mint mark. Denver struck pennies with a small D under the date. San Francisco produced pennies with an S mint mark. This simple letter is the key detail collectors look for first when examining a 1968 penny. The coin itself continued the familiar Lincoln cent design that Americans had known for decades. Abraham Lincoln's portrait on the front was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner and first appeared in 1909. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial design, introduced in 1959, shows the famous Washington, D.C. monument, with a tiny seated statue of Lincoln visible between the columns. In terms of metal, the 1968 penny is made mostly of copper. It contains 95% copper and 5% zinc, the standard composition used for Lincoln cents for many years before the switch to copper-plated zinc in the 1980s. This gives the coin its familiar warm brown color when circulated and a bright red shine when perfectly preserved. One detail that often surprises people is the quality difference among 1968 pennies. That year marked the beginning of improved minting standards after the rushed production of the mid-1960s. The U.S. Mint focused more on sharper details and better strikes, especially for coins made in San Francisco. As a result, many 1968 pennies, particularly those with an S mint mark, can be found with excellent detail. San Francisco played a special role in 1968. That year, it resumed producing proof coins for collectors. Proof pennies were struck using polished dies and planchets, resulting in mirror-like backgrounds and frosted designs. These proof coins were never meant for circulation and were sold directly to collectors in special sets. So why would anyone consider a 1968 penny rare or valuable? The truth is that most 1968 pennies are common. Millions were produced, especially at the Philadelphia and Denver mints. However, rarity in coin collecting often comes down to condition, mint mark, and mistakes made during production. High-grade examples of the 1968 penny can be surprisingly valuable. Coins that were never circulated and still show their original red copper color are much harder to find than worn brown pennies. In professional grading systems, these are called red cents, and collectors pay a premium for them. Mint errors also add excitement and value. Some 1968 pennies show double dies, where parts of the design appear doubled due to a misalignment during the die creation process. Others may show off-center strikes, clipped planchets, or missing details. These errors are genuine mint mistakes and are highly sought after by collectors. The 1968 S-proof penny deserves special attention. While proof coins were made in large numbers, pristine examples with deep mirror surfaces and strong contrast between the design and background are especially desirable. Collectors carefully inspect these coins for scratches or spots, which can reduce their value significantly. At auctions, values for 1968 Lincoln pennies can vary widely. A typical circulated penny might be worth only 1 or 2 cents. An uncirculated 1968 D penny in excellent condition might sell for a few dollars. High-grade red examples certified by professional grading services have sold for much more, sometimes reaching into the tens or even hundreds of dollars. Error coins can bring even higher prices. A well-documented double die or dramatic off-center strike from 1968 has sold at auction for several $100s, depending on the severity of the error and the coin's condition. Proof pennies with exceptional eye appeal can also command strong prices among dedicated collectors. With value comes the risk of fakes or altered coins. Fortunately, identifying a genuine 1968 Lincoln penny is not difficult if you know what to look for. Start by checking the date and mint mark. The mint mark should appear just below the date on the front of the coin. It should look clean and naturally part of the design, not scratched or added later. Weight is another helpful clue. A genuine 1968 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. Significant differences could indicate damage or tampering. The coin should also respond to a magnet test by not sticking, since copper is not magnetic. Examine the details closely. Authentic coins have sharp lettering and consistent spacing. Fake or altered coins often show uneven surfaces, unusual textures, or incorrect fonts. When in doubt, collectors rely on professional grading services to authenticate and certify valuable examples. One fun fact about the 1968 penny is that it marks the first year mint marks appeared on the front of the coin after their return. Before the mid-1960s, mint marks were placed on the back for some denominations. The modern placement under the date became the standard that collectors still recognize today. Another interesting detail is that the 1968 penny was part of the final era of mostly copper cents. Rising copper prices would eventually push the mint to change the composition in later years, making coins like the 1968 cent a reminder of a different time in American coinage. Collectors today love the 1968 Lincoln penny because it combines history, accessibility, and the thrill of the hunt. You don't need a fortune to start collecting them, yet there's always the possibility of finding a high-grade coin or rare error in an old roll or collection. For many people, the 1968 penny is also nostalgic. It connects to a turbulent but transformative period in American history, a time of social change, technological progress, and economic challenges. Holding this coin is like holding a small piece of that era. As you look through your change or an old jar of pennies, the 1968 Lincoln cent might not stand out right away. But now you know its story. You know why that tiny letter under the date matters, why condition can change value, and why collectors continue to search for the best examples. So the next time you spot a 1968 penny, take a closer look. That simple copper coin may not make you rich, but it carries a story worth far more than 1 cent. And sometimes, the most fascinating pieces of history are the ones we've been holding all along. What if I told you that a penny you might have ignored your entire life could be hiding a story of change, controversy, and quiet value? A small copper coin from 1971, often overlooked, yet deeply connected to one of the most important transitions in modern American money. Today, we are diving into the 1971 Lincoln penny with mint marks. At first glance, it looks like just another cent Abraham Lincoln on the front, the Lincoln Memorial on the back. Simple, familiar, ordinary. But once you slow down and really look at this coin, its story becomes far more interesting than most people ever realize. The 1971 Lincoln penny is part of the long-running Lincoln cent series, first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. By 1971, this design had already been in circulation for over 60 years. The United States was changing rapidly during this time. The Vietnam War was ongoing, inflation was rising, and the American economy was under pressure. Even something as small as a penny was feeling the impact of these changes. In 1971, the U.S. Mint produced Lincoln pennies at 3 different locations. Philadelphia, which used no mint mark at all. Denver, which used a small D mint mark. And San Francisco, which used an S mint mark, mostly for proof coins made specifically for collectors. Each of these mint marks tells a slightly different story and plays a role in how collectors view the coin today. The penny itself was made primarily of copper. At that time, the composition was 95% copper and 5% zinc, the same formula that had been used for decades. But here's where history becomes important. Just a year later, in 1972, rising copper prices were becoming a serious concern. Within a decade, the U.S. Mint would be forced to change the penny's metal composition forever. That makes the 1971 Lincoln penny one of the last representatives of what many collectors call the classic copper cents. The design of the 1971 penny remained unchanged from earlier years. On the front, Abraham Lincoln faces right, with the words, "In God We Trust," along the top. Liberty appears to the left, and the year, 1971, sits to the right. If there is a mint mark, it appears just below the date. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial dominates the center, with United States of America and E pluribus unum above it and 1 cent below. What makes this design especially fascinating is a tiny detail most people miss. Inside the Lincoln Memorial, if you look closely, you can actually see a small statue of Lincoln seated inside. That means Lincoln appears on both sides of the same coin. This detail has made the Lincoln Memorial reverse one of the most iconic designs in U.S. coin history. Now let's talk about what makes the 1971 Lincoln penny special, because it's not rarity in the traditional sense. Millions were made. Over 2.9 billion pennies were struck in Philadelphia alone. Denver produced over 2.7 billion. San Francisco made far fewer, but those were mostly proof coins, carefully struck for collectors. So if there are billions out there, why does anyone care? The answer lies in condition, mint marks, and errors. Most 1971 pennies you find in circulation are worn down from decades of use. Scratches, dull surfaces, and faded details are common. But a 1971 penny in near-perfect condition, especially one that has never been in circulation, is a completely different story. These coins can have sharp details, bright original copper color, and strong eye appeal. Collectors pay attention to that. Mint marks also matter. The 1971 penny with no mint mark came from Philadelphia and is the most common. The 1971 D penny from Denver is also very common but can carry a small premium in high-grade condition. The real standout is the 1971 S-proof penny. These were made specifically for collectors, struck with polished dies, and often sold in proof sets. They have mirror-like fields and frosted designs, making them visually striking. Errors are where things get truly interesting. Some 1971 pennies were struck with mistakes that make them far more valuable than their face value. One example is a double die error, where parts of the design appear doubled due to a misalignment during the minting process. Another is an off-center strike, where the design is not properly centered on the coin. There are also pennies with clipped planchets, missing metal along the edge, or weak strikes that give the coin an unusual look. These error coins were never meant to exist, which is exactly why collectors love them. So how much can a 1971 Lincoln penny be worth? In average circulated condition, most are worth only 1 cent. That's the honest truth. But uncirculated examples can sell for several dollars, depending on quality. A high-grade 1971 D penny with strong red color has sold for over $50 at auction. Proof 1971 S pennies, especially those with deep cameo contrast, can sell for $10 to $30 or more. Error coins are where prices jump dramatically. A genuine double-die 1971 penny can sell for hundreds of dollars. Rare, dramatic errors have sold for even more when demand is high and condition is strong. Identifying a real 1971 Lincoln penny is simple, but identifying a valuable one takes patience. Start with the date and mint mark. Look closely under the date for a D or an S. If there is no letter, it came from Philadelphia. Check the coin's color. Original copper has a warm, reddish tone, not dark brown or black. Examine the details in Lincoln's hair, beard, and coat. Sharp details usually mean less where .to spot errors. Use a magnifying glass. Look for doubling in the letters and numbers, especially Liberty and the date. Check the edges for missing metal or unusual shapes. If something looks strange, it might be worth a closer look by a professional coin grader. Point 1 important warning is fakes. While it may sound surprising, altered pennies do exist. Some people add fake mint marks or try to make a normal coin look like an error. Real mint marks are part of the coin, not glued or scratched on. If a mint mark looks raised, uneven, or out of place, be cautious. When in doubt, trusted grading services can confirm authenticity. Here's a fun fact many people don't know. In 1971, pennies were still widely used for everyday purchases. You could actually buy something meaningful with a handful of cents. Today, many people toss pennies aside without a second thought. That change in attitude has made older copper pennies more appealing to collectors who see them as symbols of a different economic era. Another surprising detail is that 1971 pennies are heavier than modern pennies. If you hold one in your hand and compare it to a penny made after 1982, you can feel the difference. That's because modern pennies contain mostly zinc. This physical difference makes the 1971 penny a favorite for people who enjoy tangible history. Collectors today love the 1971 Lincoln penny not because it is rare, but because it sits at a turning point. It represents the end of an era when American pennies were truly made of copper. It connects everyday life, history, and craftsmanship in a way that modern coins simply do not. For beginner collectors, it's an affordable entry point. For advanced collectors, it offers challenges through high-grade examples and error varieties. And for history lovers, it's a small reminder of how even the simplest objects reflect the times they were made. So the next time you see a 1971 penny, don't dismiss it. Look at the date. Look for the mint mark. Look at the details. Because sometimes, the most ordinary-looking coins carry the most unexpected stories. And who knows? The next penny you find might not just be worth 1 cent. It might be worth your curiosity. Imagine reaching into your pocket and pulling out a penny that looks completely ordinary. No silver shine. No dramatic date like 1909. Just a simple Lincoln cent from 1973. But what if I told you that this everyday penny carries a hidden story of economic pressure, quiet design history, and rare mistakes that can turn 1 cent into hundreds, even thousands of dollars? Today, we're uncovering the surprising story behind the 1973 mint mark Lincoln penny. The 1973 Lincoln penny is part of one of the longest-running coin designs in American history. First introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln, the Lincoln cent became the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical person. By 1973, this design had already been in circulation for more than 6 decades, quietly passing through millions of hands every single day. At first glance, a 1973 penny doesn't seem special. It features Abraham Lincoln's familiar profile on the front, facing right, just as he has since 1909. On the back, it shows the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959 to mark the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. Above the memorial are the words United States of America, and below it, 1 cent, Inside the memorial, if you look closely, you can even see a tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside, making this one of the most detailed designs ever used on a circulating US coin. To understand this coin, we need to travel back to the early 1970s. America was going through major changes. The Vietnam War was still ongoing. Inflation was rising. The country was dealing with an energy crisis, and metal prices were climbing. Copper, the primary metal used in pennies, was becoming more expensive, and the US Mint was under pressure to keep producing coins at low cost. In 1973, pennies were still made mostly of copper. Each one was composed of 95% copper and 5% zinc, the same formula used for decades. These coins feel solid compared to modern pennies, which switched to a mostly zinc core in 1982. That heavier copper content gives the 1973 penny a warm reddish tone when well preserved, something collectors deeply appreciate today. The year 1973 also marked an interesting point in minting history. No pennies were struck at the Philadelphia Mint with a visible P mint mark. Coins from Philadelphia simply show the date, 1973, with no letter beneath it. Meanwhile, pennies were also struck in Denver, marked with a small d, and in San Francisco, marked with an S. The Philadelphia Mint produced more than 2 billion pennies in 1973. Denver struck over 2.5 billion. San Francisco produced far fewer, around 317 million, and most of those were made for collectors rather than everyday circulation. With numbers like these, you might assume the 1973 penny is extremely common, and in many ways it is, but that's only part of the story. What makes the 1973 Lincoln penny interesting isn't just how many were made, but how many survived in perfect condition. Pennies are workhorse coins. They get tossed into jars, scraped across counters, and buried at the bottom of pockets. Very few escape circulation without damage. As a result, finding a 1973 penny in truly flawless condition is far more difficult than you might expect. The design itself also has subtle details that collectors love. Lincoln's portrait was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner, whose initials VDB appeared discreetly on the shoulder of Lincoln's coat. By 1973, the design had been slightly softened by decades of dye polishing, but sharp strikes still show crisp lettering and fine details in Lincoln's hair and jawline point. One of the most exciting aspects of the 1973 penny is the possibility of mint errors. These errors are accidental mistakes that happen during the minting process, and they can dramatically increase a coin's value. Some 1973 pennies were struck off-center, leaving part of the design missing. Others show doubled lettering, where the date or words appear slightly doubled due to a misaligned die. There are also 1973 pennies with die cracks, where thin raised lines appear across the coin surface. These cracks form when minting dies begin to wear out but are still used to strike coins. To collectors, these imperfections are fascinating snapshots of the minting process under stress. Another highly collectible variation is the 1973 S penny. San Francisco coins are often better struck and more carefully handled, especially those sold in mint sets. Because of this, high-grade 1973 S pennies are more likely to survive in near-perfect condition, making them favorites among collectors building complete Lincoln cent collections. So, is the 1973 penny rare? In everyday condition, no. You can still find them in circulation today. But rarity in coin collecting isn't just about how many were made. It's about how many remain in top condition. When it comes to uncirculated or professionally graded coins, the story changes dramatically. A worn 1973 penny is usually worth 1 cent. A clean, shiny, uncirculated example might sell for a few dollars. But a 1973 penny graded at the highest levels by professional grading services can command much higher prices. Some top-grade examples have sold at auction for several $100s, especially when they show strong color and sharp detail. Error coins tell an even more dramatic story. Off-center strikes, double dies, and other mint mistakes from 1973 have sold for hundreds or even thousands of dollars, depending on the severity and visibility of the error. These are not common, and finding one is like winning a small lottery hidden in your spare change. Because valuable coins attract attention, fakes and altered coins do exist. Identifying a genuine 1973 penny starts with weight and color. A real copper penny from this year should weigh about 3.11 grams and have a solid copper appearance. Be cautious of coins that appear unusually light or have strange surfaces, as they may have been altered. Examine the date and mint mark carefully. On genuine coins, the mint mark is part of the original strike, not added later. Added mint marks often look uneven or sit at the wrong angle. Magnification helps, but so does comparing the coin to known authentic examples. Professional grading services are the safest way to confirm authenticity and value. These services examine the coin, verify it's real, and assign a grade that collectors trust. For valuable error coins or high-grade examples, this step is often essential. There are also some fun and surprising facts about the 1973 penny. During this time, the U.S. Mint was actively studying alternatives to copper because of rising costs. While the composition didn't change until later, the 1973 penny represents the end of an era, one of the last generations of traditional copper cents. Another interesting detail is that some people mistakenly believe there are aluminum pennies from 1973. While aluminum cents were experimented with that year, they were never officially released into circulation. Any genuine aluminum 1973 cent is extremely rare and not legally collectible, making the regular copper penny the only legitimate version most people will ever encounter. Collectors today love the 1973 Lincoln penny because it's approachable. You don't need to spend a fortune to own one. You can start with a simple example and work your way up, searching for better condition coins, mint marks, or errors. It's a perfect entry point into coin collecting and a reminder that history doesn't always come wrapped in gold or silver. This penny also tells a quiet story about America in the 1970s. It reflects economic pressures, changing technology, and the mint's effort to balance tradition with practicality. Each one is a tiny time capsule from a decade of transformation, so the next time you see a 1973 penny, don't dismiss it as just another cent. Look closer. Check the mint mark. Examine the details. You might be holding a small piece of history, or maybe even a hidden treasure that has been waiting decades to be noticed. Sometimes, the most fascinating stories aren't found in rare museums or locked vaults. They're hiding in plain sight, quietly passing from hand to hand, waiting for someone curious enough to ask, "What's this really worth?" What if I told you that a penny from your pocket could be a quiet witness to America's past, and in rare cases, worth far more than 1 cent? Today, we're uncovering the real story behind the 1979 mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin most people overlook but collectors never stop searching for. The coin we're talking about is the 1979 Lincoln cent, sometimes called the Lincoln penny. It features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. Depending on where it was made, this penny may have a small letter under the date, known as a mint mark. That tiny letter, or the absence of one, is the key to understanding its story and its value. By 1979, the Lincoln penny was already a long-running symbol of American money. The Lincoln cent first appeared in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln, making it the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical person. 70 years later, in 1979, the design was still going strong. America was going through economic changes, inflation was high, and pennies were being produced in massive numbers to keep up with daily commerce. The U.S. Mint struck millions of Lincoln cents that year to ensure there were enough coins for everyday USE. In 1979, Lincoln pennies were made at 3 different mints. Philadelphia produced pennies with no mint mark. Denver produced pennies with a small d under the date. San Francisco produced pennies with an S mint mark, mostly intended for collectors rather than circulation. Each mint played a role in keeping the nation supplied with small change, and each version of the 1979 penny has its own place in the collecting world. The history behind this penny is not about a single dramatic event, but about continuity. The United States was holding onto tradition. The Lincoln Memorial design on the back, introduced in 1959, symbolized stability and respect for history. Even as the country faced rising costs and changing times, the penny remained familiar. That sense of continuity is part of what makes the 1979 Lincoln cent interesting to collectors today. Now let's look closely at what makes this coin unique. The 1979 Lincoln penny is made primarily of copper. Specifically, it contains 95% copper and 5% zinc, the same composition used for decades before changes in the early 1980s. This gives the coin a solid feel and a warm reddish color when well preserved. Many people don't realize that modern pennies no longer contain this much copper, which makes pre-1982 cents like the 1979 especially appealing. On the front of the coin, Abraham Lincoln faces to the right. Above his head is the word liberty, and behind him is the motto, "In God we trust." Below his portrait is the date, 1979, with the mint mark just beneath it if one is present. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial dominates the design, with the words United States of America and E pluribus unum above it and 1 cent below. If you look closely at the memorial, you can even see a tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside, a detail that fascinates many collectors. When it comes to errors and varieties, the 1979 Lincoln penny is not famous for a single dramatic mistake, but there are still things collectors look for. Some coins show off-center strikes, where the design is slightly misaligned. Others may have doubled lettering, where words appear thicker or shadowed due to a striking issue. There are also pennies with weak strikes, missing details, or unusual die marks. These errors are uncommon, and when found in good condition, they can raise the coin's value significantly. So why would a 1979 penny be considered rare or valuable at all? The truth is, most of them are not rare. Millions were made, and many are still sitting in jars, drawers, and piggy banks across the country. However, value in coin collecting often comes from condition, mint mark, and special features. A regular 1979 penny that has been heavily circulated is usually worth only 1 cent. But a penny that looks nearly perfect, with sharp details and no wear, is a different story. Coins graded in mint condition, especially those graded by professional services, can be worth several dollars or more. A 1979 penny with a D mint mark or no mint mark, preserved in exceptional condition, can sell for a premium. San Francisco mint pennies, particularly proof versions made specifically for collectors, are also more desirable. These proof coins have mirror-like surfaces and sharp designs, making them stand out immediately. There have been real-world sales that show this difference clearly. While circulated examples trade for face value, high-grade 1979 Lincoln cents have sold at coin shows and auctions for prices ranging from a few dollars to several dozen dollars, depending on quality and certification. Proof coins from San Francisco often sell for higher prices, especially when kept in their original packaging or graded in top condition. Error coins, when verified, can bring even more, sometimes reaching into the hundreds of dollars for dramatic mistakes. Identifying a real 1979 Lincoln penny is straightforward, but it's still important to know what to look for. Start by checking the date and mint mark. The date should clearly read 1979. Look just below it for a D or an S or nothing at all. The weight should feel solid for a copper coin. If you have a scale, a genuine copper cent from this era weighs about 3.11 grams. A significantly lighter coin could be damaged or altered. Pay attention to the design details. Lincoln's portrait should be well defined, with clear lines in the hair and face. The lettering should be sharp, not blurry or uneven. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial should show strong columns and clear steps. Be cautious of coins that look artificially shiny or have strange textures, as these could be altered or cleaned, which lowers collector value. One surprising fact about the 1979 Lincoln penny is how close it came to a major change in U.S. coinage. Just a few years later, in 1982, the mint switched to a mostly zinc composition to save money. That makes 1979 one of the last years of the traditional copper penny, tying it to a long era of American coin history. Another fun detail is that some collectors enjoy searching rolls of pennies from banks specifically for late 1970s cents, hoping to find a high-grade example that escaped heavy circulation. Collectors also appreciate how accessible this coin is. You don't need a large budget to start collecting 1979 Lincoln pennies. You can find them in everyday change, inherited collections, or inexpensive coin rolls. That accessibility makes the hunt exciting. Every penny becomes a small mystery, a chance to discover something better than expected. Today, collectors love the 1979 Lincoln penny because it represents the everyday history of America. It's a reminder of a time when copper pennies were still common, when design stayed consistent, and when even the smallest coin played a big role in daily life. For beginner collectors, it's an affordable entry point. For experienced collectors, it's a challenge to find the best possible example or a legitimate error. As we come to the end of this story, remember this: The 1979 mint Mark Lincoln penny may look ordinary, but it carries decades of history in its copper core. The next time you see one, take a second look. That small coin might not make you rich, but it connects you to America's past in a way few objects can. And who knows, the next penny you find could be the one that sparks a lifelong passion for collecting. Most people have held this coin and never gave it a second thought. It slips through your fingers, rattles in jars, and hides in couch cushions. But what if I told you that a simple 1988 Lincoln penny with a tiny mint mark could be worth far more than 1 cent, and in rare cases, hundreds or even thousands of dollars? That forgotten penny in your pocket might have a story you never imagined. Today, we're diving into the fascinating story of the 1988 Lincoln penny coin with a mint mark. This is not a flashy gold coin or an ancient relic. It's a modern American penny that millions of people handled without realizing that some examples are quietly prized by collectors. Its value doesn't come from age alone, but from history, design, mistakes, and the thrill of discovery. The 1988 Lincoln penny is part of one of the longest-running coin designs in United States history. The Lincoln cent was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln. It was the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical person, and it changed American coinage forever. By 1988, this design had already been in circulation for nearly 8 decades, making it one of the most familiar coins in the country. The year 1988 sits quietly near the end of the Cold War era. America was on the brink of major change, even if people didn't realize it yet. The economy was growing, technology was advancing, and everyday life was becoming more modern. During this time, the U.S. Mint was producing billions of coins each year to keep up with daily commerce. Pennies were still essential for purchases, vending machines, and making exact change. In 1988, Lincoln pennies were struck at 3 different mints. Philadelphia produced coins with no mint mark. Denver struck pennies with a small d below the date. San Francisco produced proof coins with an S mint mark, made specifically for collectors. Each mint mark tells a different story, and each version of the 1988 penny has its own place in the collector world. At first glance, the design of the 1988 Lincoln penny looks simple and familiar. On the front, you see Abraham Lincoln facing to the right. His expression is calm and thoughtful, just as it has appeared on the penny since 1909. Above his head is the word liberty. In front of his face is the phrase "In God we trust." Below him is the date, 1988, along with the mint mark if there is one. The back of the coin features the Lincoln Memorial, a design that was introduced in 1959 to honor the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. Look closely, and you can even see a tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside the memorial. Above it reads United States of America, and below it is the coin's denomination, 1 cent. This reverse design would remain until 2008, making the 1988 penny part of a classic and beloved era. In terms of metal, the 1988 Lincoln penny is made of zinc with a thin copper coating. This composition began in 1982 when rising copper prices made it too expensive to produce pennies with solid copper. While older pennies feel heavier and richer, the 1988 penny is lighter and more modern. Still, that copper shine gives it the familiar look most people expect. So if billions were made, why does anyone care about a 1988 penny today? The answer lies in condition, mint marks, and most importantly, errors. Coin collectors are always searching for pieces that stand out from the ordinary, and some 1988 pennies do exactly that. One of the most famous and valuable varieties is the 1988 double die reverse penny. This error happened during the coin-making process when the die that stamped the coin was misaligned. As a result, parts of the design appear doubled. On this particular penny, the doubling is especially strong on the reverse side, most notably in the words United States of America and 1 cent. This doubling is not subtle. Even with the naked eye, you can often see letters that look thick, shadowed, or slightly separated. For collectors, this is a dream find. The 1988 double die reverse penny is considered one of the strongest double die errors of the modern era, and it has become legendary among Lincoln cent collectors. Beyond error coins, condition plays a huge role in value. Most 1988 pennies were heavily circulated and show wear, scratches, and dull surfaces. But coins that were never used, known as uncirculated coins, are much harder to find today. Those that still have bright red copper color are especially desirable. Professional grading services evaluate coins based on their condition and assign them a grade. A high-grade 1988 penny, especially one with a mint mark like D or S, can be worth far more than face value. Proof coins from San Francisco, struck with extra care and mirror-like surfaces, are also collected and preserved by enthusiasts. When it comes to real-world value, results can be surprising. A regular 1988 penny found in pocket change is usually worth 1 cent. But a well-preserved, uncirculated example can sell for a few dollars. Proof versions can range higher, especially when kept in original condition. The real excitement comes from error coins. Authentic 1988 double-die reverse pennies have sold at auctions for hundreds of dollars, and in top condition, some have reached into the thousands. These sales are well documented and closely followed by collectors who dream of finding one in an old coin jar or inherited collection. With higher value comes the risk of fakes or misidentifications. Many people mistake machine doubling or worn dies for true double die errors. Learning how to identify a genuine 1988 penny is crucial. A real double die will show clear, rounded doubling that looks like a second image, not flat or smeared lines. Weight is another clue. A genuine 1988 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. Major differences could indicate damage or tampering. The mint mark should be sharp and properly shaped, not added later. Under magnification, authentic coins show consistent details that match known examples. Collectors often recommend comparing your coin to verified images from trusted sources. If you think you've found something special, professional authentication is always the safest step. While it costs money, it protects you from disappointment and confirms whether your coin is truly rare. There are also fun and surprising details about the 1988 Lincoln penny. Even though it's considered modern, it's already several decades old. Many people who used these coins as children are now adults rediscovering them through collecting. It's a reminder that history doesn't always feel old when it's happening. Another interesting fact is how many pennies were saved without people realizing it. Coffee cans, drawers, and old piggy banks often contain rolls of 1980s pennies. Hidden among them could be a high-grade example or even an error coin waiting to be discovered. Collectors love the 1988 penny because it represents possibility. It's affordable, accessible, and still found in the wild. You don't need a fortune to start searching. Anyone can check their change and feel the excitement of the hunt. For many collectors, the joy isn't just about money. It's about holding a small piece of American history, understanding how it was made, and appreciating the craftsmanship behind something so ordinary. The 1988 Lincoln penny reminds us that even everyday objects can have extraordinary stories. As we look back on this coin today, it stands as a bridge between past and present. It carries Lincoln's image, a design rooted in the early 1900s, yet it was made during a time many of us still remember. That connection is powerful and personal, so the next time you come across a 1988 Lincoln penny with a tiny mint mark beneath the date, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look. Turn it over. Check the letters. You might be holding a common coin, or you might be holding a small surprise from history. And that's the magic of coin collecting. Every coin has a story, but not every story has been discovered yet. Somewhere out there, a rare 1988 penny is still waiting to be found, quietly blending in, just 1 cent at a time. Most people have held this coin in their hand and never gave it a second thought. It looks ordinary, it feels light, and it often ends up lost in a drawer. But what if I told you that a simple 1991 Lincoln penny could carry hidden stories, quiet mysteries, and in rare cases, surprising value? Today we are diving into the story of the 1991 Lincoln penny, a coin that represents the end of an era, the pulse of early 1990s America, and the reason why collectors still look closely at even the most common change. The 1991 Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin produced by the United States Mint. It features Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. This design had been in use for decades by 1991, making it instantly familiar to anyone who used cash during that time. At first glance, there is nothing flashy about it. But coins like this are not just money. They are time capsules. To understand this penny, we need to step back into the year 1991. The United States was going through major changes. The Cold War was coming to an end. Technology was advancing quickly. The internet was still in its early stages, and everyday life looked very different from today. During this time, the U.S. Mint was producing billions of pennies each year to keep up with daily commerce. The Lincoln cent itself has a much longer history. It was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln. This was the first U.S. coin to feature a real person. By 1991, the design had already become a symbol of American identity. Even though the country was changing fast, the penny stayed familiar and steady. The 1991 penny was struck at 3 different locations. Coins without a mint mark were made in Philadelphia. Coins with a small d were made in Denver. Coins with an S were made in San Francisco, mostly for collectors as proof coins. Each mint played a role in keeping the nation supplied with coins, and each left its own subtle mark point. One of the most interesting things about the 1991 Lincoln penny is what it is made of. While many people assume pennies are solid copper, that had not been true for several years by 1991. Rising copper prices in the early 1980s forced the U.S. Mint to change the composition. By 1991, the penny was made mostly of zinc, with only a thin copper coating on the outside. This made the coin lighter and cheaper to produce, even though it still looked like traditional copper. The design of the coin remained classic. On the front, Lincoln faces to the right with a calm and thoughtful expression. The words "In God We Trust" appear above his head. Liberty is written on the left side, and the date 1991 is shown on the right. If the coin was minted in Denver or San Francisco, a small mint mark appears just below the date on the back. The Lincoln Memorial stands proudly in the center. If you look closely, you can actually see a tiny statue of Lincoln sitting inside the memorial. Above it are the words "United States of America," and below it is 1 cent. This design was created by Frank Gasparo and was used from 1959 until 2008. At this point, you might be wondering why anyone would care about a penny that was produced in such large numbers. The answer lies in the details. While most 1991 pennies are common, a small number stand out because of condition, errors, or special strikes. Minting errors are one reason collectors examine these coins carefully. Errors happen when something goes wrong during the production process. A penny might be struck off-center, leaving part of the design missing. Another might show doubled letters or numbers, caused by a misaligned die. Some 1991 pennies have weak strikes, cracks, or unusual marks that make them different from standard coins. There are also rare cases where pennies are struck on the wrong metal. While extremely uncommon, a few Lincoln cents from nearby years have been found on planchets meant for other coins. If a genuine 1991 penny were ever discovered on the wrong metal, it would be highly valuable. Condition plays a huge role in value as well. Most 1991 pennies were used in daily transactions and quickly became scratched, dirty, or worn. But coins that were never used, known as uncirculated coins, can look almost brand new decades later. These coins are harder to find today, especially with full original shine and sharp details. Professional coin grading services evaluate coins based on condition. A 1991 penny in average circulated condition is usually worth only 1 cent. However, a perfectly preserved example with no wear can sell for several dollars. In rare cases, high-grade examples have sold at auction for much more, especially when competition between collectors drives prices higher. Proof coins are another category collectors love. These were made in San Francisco with special polished dies and planchets. Proof 1991 pennies have mirror-like backgrounds and very sharp details. They were never meant for circulation and were sold directly to collectors. Because they were carefully preserved, many still exist today, but they remain desirable due to their beauty and quality. When it comes to identifying a real 1991 Lincoln penny, the process is straightforward. Start by checking the date and mint mark. Look closely at the design details. Genuine coins have sharp, consistent lettering and correct spacing. The weight should be about 2.5 grams. A coin that feels too heavy or too light may be altered or fake. Magnification can help reveal important clues. Real coins show natural wear patterns, while counterfeit coins often have soft or uneven details. If you ever believe you have a valuable error or high-grade example, it is best to have it examined by a professional coin dealer or grading service. There are also some fun and surprising facts about this coin. Even though the penny cost more to make than its face value in later years, in 1991 it was still relatively economical to produce. This makes it part of the ongoing debate about whether the penny should still exist today. Another interesting detail is how many of these coins are still out there. Because billions were made, 1991 pennies are still being found in circulation. That means anyone, anywhere, could stumble across a well-preserved example just by checking their change. Collectors love the 1991 Lincoln penny not because it is flashy or famous, but because it represents everyday American life. It tells the story of a country moving from one era into another. It reminds collectors that history is not only found in rare gold coins or ancient artifacts, but also in the small change we use every day. For beginner collectors, this coin is often a starting point. It is affordable, easy to find, and full of learning opportunities. For advanced collectors, it offers the challenge of finding the best possible condition or a unique error. So the next time you see a 1991 penny, do not dismiss it too quickly. Take a moment to look at it closely. Notice the details, the color, and the story it carries. That tiny coin may not make you rich, but it connects you to a moment in American history that is quietly fading into the past. Sometimes, the most ordinary objects hold the most unexpected stories. And sometimes, all it takes is one small coin to make you look at history in a completely new way. Most people have held this coin, spent it, and never gave it a second thought. But what if I told you that a simple 1994 Lincoln penny could be hiding a story of quiet rarity, surprising value, and details so small that most eyes miss them completely? Today we are diving into the 1994 Lincoln penny, a coin that looks ordinary at first glance, but carries layers of history and collector interest beneath its copper surface. The 1994 Lincoln penny is part of the long-running Lincoln cent series, first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. By 1994, this design had already been in circulation for 85 years, making it one of the most recognizable coins in American history. Nearly every American alive at the time had seen Lincoln's profile staring back at them from pocket change. In 1994, the United States Mint produced Lincoln pennies at 3 locations. Philadelphia struck pennies with no mint mark. Denver produced pennies with a small D mint mark. San Francisco struck proof coins, marked with an S, specially made for collectors. Altogether, billions of 1994 pennies were made, which is why most people assume they are worthless. But coin collecting often rewards those who look closer. To understand the 1994 penny, it helps to understand the moment in history when it was made. The early 1990s were a time of economic recovery in the United States. Inflation was relatively stable, digital technology was just beginning to enter everyday life, and cash was still king. Pennies were used constantly, and the mint produced massive quantities to meet demand. By this time, the penny was no longer made of solid copper. That change had happened in 1982. The 1994 Lincoln penny is made of 97.5% zinc with a thin copper coating. This made the coin cheaper to produce while keeping its traditional copper appearance. Many people do not realize this and still assume all older-looking pennies are solid copper. The design of the 1994 Lincoln penny follows the familiar pattern. On the front or obverse is Abraham Lincoln's right-facing portrait, designed by Victor David Brenner. The words "In God We Trust" appear above Lincoln's head. Liberty is written to the left, and the date, 1994, appears to the right. If the coin was minted in Denver or San Francisco, the mint mark appears just below the date. On the back or reverse, you will find the Lincoln Memorial design. This reverse was introduced in 1959 and was used until 2008. At the center is the Lincoln Memorial Building, and if you look very closely, you can actually see a tiny seated statue of Lincoln inside. Above the memorial are the words United States of America, and below it reads 1 cent. The phrase E pluribus unum sits above the memorial. At first glance, nothing about this coin seems unusual, but collectors know that value often comes from small differences, errors, and variations that occur during the minting process. One of the most talked about features connected to the 1994 Lincoln penny is a rare reverse design detail known as the wide AM. Normally, on most Lincoln Memorial pennies, The letters A and M in the word America on the reverse are very close together, almost touching. However, on a small number of 1994 pennies, these letters are spaced farther apart. This wide AM reverse was originally intended only for proof coins, but a few found their way onto regular circulation strikes. Finding a genuine 1994 wide AM penny is extremely difficult, but it does happen. Most examples have been discovered from the Philadelphia and Denver mints. This single spacing difference, barely noticeable without careful inspection, can turn a 1-cent coin into something worth hundreds of dollars. Another area of interest for collectors is mint errors. Like all mass-produced coins, the 1994 penny occasionally left the mint with mistakes. These include off-center strikes, where the design is not properly aligned, clipped planchets where part of the coin is missing, and double dies where parts of the lettering or date appear doubled due to a misaligned die. Double die errors are especially popular because they can often be seen with the naked eye or a simple magnifying glass. On some 1994 pennies, doubling may appear on the date, the word liberty, or in God we trust. These errors are not common, and confirmed examples can be quite valuable to collectors, so why would anyone consider the 1994 Lincoln penny rare or valuable if billions were made? The answer lies in condition and variety. Most 1994 pennies spent years in circulation, picking up scratches, stains, and wear. Finding one in pristine condition, especially with full original luster, is much harder today than it was when the coin was new. High-grade uncirculated 1994 pennies, especially those certified by professional grading services, can sell for surprising amounts. Coins graded MS-67 or higher are scarce and can bring strong prices from collectors trying to complete high-quality sets. Proof coins from San Francisco are another category entirely. These were struck with specially polished dies and planchets, resulting in sharp details and mirror-like surfaces. A 1994 S-proof penny in perfect condition is not rare, but it is highly collectible and valued for its beauty rather than scarcity. Real auction results help tell the story. A standard circulated 1994 penny is usually worth 1 cent. An uncirculated example might sell for a few cents to $1. But a 1994 penny with a confirmed wide AM reverse has sold at auction for several $100s, depending on condition. High-grade mint state examples have also reached into the hundreds when competition is strong. Error coins tell a similar story. A dramatic off-center strike or a strong double die can sell for anywhere from $50 to several $100s. These prices depend on how clear the error is and how well the coin has been preserved. Of course, value brings the risk of counterfeits or misidentified coins. To identify a real 1994 penny worth keeping, start with the basics. Check the date and mint mark carefully. Use a magnifying glass to inspect the spacing of the A and M in America. Compare it to images from trusted coin references. On a true wide AM, the gap between the letters is obvious once you know what to look for. Weight can also help. A genuine 1994 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. While most fakes are rare for this coin, altered coins do exist, especially those with manipulated mint marks or altered dates. When in doubt, professional grading services can authenticate and grade the coin. There are also some fun and surprising facts about the 1994 Lincoln penny. This coin was produced during a time when discussions about eliminating the penny were already taking place, debates that continue even today. Despite this, pennies like the 1994 issue remain deeply embedded in American culture. Another interesting detail is how many of these coins still exist. Because pennies are often saved in jars and drawers, huge numbers of 1994 pennies are still around. Yet only a tiny fraction are worth more than face value, which makes the hunt for special examples exciting. Collectors today love the 1994 Lincoln penny not because it is flashy or famous, but because it represents the thrill of discovery. It reminds collectors that valuable coins are not always ancient or gold. Sometimes they are hiding in plain sight, overlooked for decades. For new collectors, the 1994 penny is a perfect teaching coin. It shows how condition matters, how small design details can change value, and how modern coins can still hold surprises. For experienced collectors, it offers a challenge, finding top-grade examples or elusive varieties that complete a set. The next time you see a handful of pennies, take a moment before you spend them. Look at the dates. Look closely at the details. That simple 1994 Lincoln penny might not just be loose change. It might be a small piece of American history with a story still waiting to be discovered. And if a single letter spacing can turn 1 cent into hundreds of dollars, imagine what other secrets could be hiding in the coins you already own.